This little girl was so determined to become the adopted daughter of a wealthy family that she actually set a dog loose on the rich grandmother. The elderly woman was terrified by what she saw. Just as the vicious dog was about to attack, the little girl stepped in to block it. The grandmother was saved, and the girl successfully made her way into the wealthy household. What she didn't know was that her nightmare was only beginning. When the wealthy grandmother came to the orphanage looking for a child to adopt, the girl scoffed at the whole thing. She had zero interest, but her odd behavior caught the attention of the head housekeeper, Ms. Kim. While all the other kids were fighting tooth and nail to get picked, this girl ran away faster than a rabbit. The girl, Chai-rin, was stopped by Ms. Kim. Chai-rin's defiant attitude infuriated the housekeeper. Ms. Kim flat out told her she would never be chosen as the adopted daughter, but this only fueled Chai-rin's determination. She made up her mind right then and there that she would become the young lady of that house. And that's how we got the scene at the beginning. Once Chai-rin entered the wealthy family, she was adored by her adoptive parents. Meanwhile, their biological granddaughter, Sua, was ignored by her own parents. The grandmother began to resent Chai-rin, but the good times didn't last. Just days after arriving, Chai-rin fell seriously ill. Her adoptive parents happened to be away on business. Their daughter Sua had also been sent to stay with friends. Only the grandmother and Chai-rin were left at home. So instead of taking Chai-rin to the hospital, the grandmother locked her away in a storage room all by herself. The superstitious old woman believed that the sicker Chai-rin got, the healthier her real granddaughter Sua would become. When Chai-rin first entered the household, she had been taken to a dark room. It turned out Sua was extremely frail and could die at any moment. The grandmother loved Sua dearly. To ensure the cosmetics company wouldn't lose its only heir, she followed a shaman's advice: find someone to take on Sua's misfortune so that Sua could live a long and healthy life. That unlucky soul was Chai-rin. Through a ritual, the shaman transferred all the disasters meant for Sua onto Chai-rin. At the time, innocent little Chai-rin had no idea what was going on. Ms. Kim came to see Chai-rin and told her not to dream of becoming the young lady of the house. She said unless Chai-rin could make it out of there alive, she would never acknowledge her status. But too bad for you, you're definitely going to die. Furious, Chai-rin knocked over her food, ready to fight back. But her weakened body was no match for the housekeeper. This time, Ms. Kim cruelly cut off Chai-rin's water and food. On the brink of death, Chai-rin's will to survive burned even brighter. She started searching everywhere for something to eat. She went through everything she could find. If it was edible, she ate it. If not, she tossed it aside. Finally, she discovered a century-old ginseng root that had been saved for Sua. Starving, Chai-rin didn't think twice and ate it. The next day, the grandmother sent a servant to retrieve the ginseng to cook for Sua. She made a big deal about how if the ginseng changed owners, the one who was supposed to die would live, and the one who was supposed to live would die. Their fates would be switched, and their destinies would be exchanged. The servant immediately went to the storage room to get the ginseng. When the overjoyed grandmother heard that Chai-rin had eaten it, she went pale as a ghost. She rushed to the storage room to check. Just then, the phone rang. The servant ran out to answer it. The grandmother saw the half-eaten ginseng and felt like her heart was being torn apart. At that moment, the servant delivered the news that Sua had gone missing. The grandmother hurried out to take the call. Chai-rin, having narrowly escaped death, woke up. She saw that all the rashes on her body had disappeared and was overjoyed. She happily wanted to share the good news with her grandmother. But when the grandmother saw Chai-rin walk out looking perfectly healthy, she collapsed to the ground in shock. She screamed accusations at Chai-rin, calling her a cursed child who caused Sua's disappearance. The grandmother grabbed Chai-rin by the throat and said, "You're the one who should have disappeared. You were supposed to disappear in place of my Sua." Ms. Kim saw this and rushed over to stop it. Sua's disappearance left the grandmother devastated. Time flew by. 20 years passed. Chai-rin had grown into a beautiful woman and was now running the grandmother's cosmetics company. A new product she developed was a huge hit with consumers, so she was invited for a TV interview. Meanwhile, the grandmother watched from home, glaring at Chai-rin's smiling face with bitter hatred. Especially when Chai-rin sincerely expressed gratitude toward her, the grandmother cursed her as a jinx under her breath. Standing on the street was a cosmetics company employee named Ha Yunju, gazing enviously at the glamorous Chai-rin. Yunju was actually the missing Sua. She was fantasizing that if she were a man, she would definitely marry the successful Chai-rin. Yunju had no idea that she was the company's true heir. Meanwhile, Chai-rin was hosting a company networking event at a villa. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed through the mansion. The grandmother immediately went upstairs to check. She found Sua's mother with disheveled hair, frantically smashing things in her room. A news report was playing on the TV. It turned out that 20 years ago, Sua had been kidnapped by that despicable man. Sua's mother couldn't bear having old wounds reopened. She hid in the bathroom and sobbed. The grandmother didn't know what to do and could only contact Chai-rin at the party to come home. At that moment, Chai-rin couldn't possibly leave, but under the grandmother's pressure, she had no choice but to go back. Once home, Chai-rin put on a wig and dressed up as Sua. She sang the nursery rhyme her adoptive mother had taught her as a child. Chai-rin looked at her mother lying in bed with a heavy heart. She remembered how as a little girl, she would secretly watch Sua and her mother sitting on the swing together, singing. Lonely little Chai-rin couldn't help but sing along with them. Now Sua was gone, and Chai-rin had come to see her adoptive mother as her real mother. Her mother gradually fell asleep to Chai-rin's singing. After calming her mother down, Chai-rin was about to change and head back to the company. The grandmother suddenly walked in and slapped Chai-rin hard across the face. Chairin looked at her with hurt in her eyes. The grandmother accused Chairin of wanting Sua's mother to go crazy so she, the fake heir, could take over the company. Chairin couldn't believe the grandmother would think of her with such malice. What hurt Chairin even more was that the grandmother was convinced she had a talisman on her body to prevent Sua from coming back. Hurt and furious, Chairin cried as she stripped off her clothes right in front of the grandmother, demanding she look and see if there was any so-called talisman. To the grandmother's disappointment, there was no talisman on Chairin's body. She reluctantly let Chairin leave. One day, Chairin and her father were happily going over a project proposal when the secretary burst in, panicked. Their company's raw material supply had suddenly been cut off. Her father turned pale. This was an unprecedented crisis for the company. The remaining materials could only cover half their orders. Her father made countless calls begging for help, but nothing worked. The company was on the verge of bankruptcy. When the grandmother learned about the company's situation, she happened to receive a call from Chairman Moon, the richest man in Korea. Chairman Moon had deliberately blocked the cosmetics company's funding sources. He made sure the grandmother knew that only he could help them through this crisis. The grandmother personally visited Chairman Moon. He hinted that he would only help if their two families joined through marriage. The grandmother had no other choice. She immediately arranged for Chairin to meet Chairman Moon's son. This was all part of Chairman Moon's scheme. He wanted to take over the cosmetics company, and a marriage alliance was how he planned to do it. Everyone knew the chairman's son was a notorious playboy, but for the company's sake, Chairin reluctantly agreed to have dinner with him. When she saw this playboy, Jae-sang, she completely lost her appetite. She got up to leave but was stopped at the door by Jae-sang's driver, Eun-hyuk. Seeing Chairin determined to leave, Jae-sang suddenly hurled an empty plate at the door frame. The shattered pieces cut Chairin's face. She froze in shock. Eun-hyuk took the opportunity to place a necklace around her neck, a symbol of becoming a daughter-in-law of the corporate family. That's when Chairin learned from Jae-sang that her marriage had already been arranged. Chairin didn't want her life controlled by others. She especially didn't want to marry a playboy like him. When she got home, she went straight to the grandmother's room. Years of pent-up resentment finally exploded. As Chairin confronted her, the grandmother threw a glass of water in her face. She declared that whether Chairin liked it or not, she had to marry Chairman Moon's son, Jae-sang. Chairin firmly said she absolutely would not marry him. The next second, 4 men in raincoats walked in. They grabbed Chairin and dragged her out of the villa. In the pouring rain, helpless Chairin struggled and screamed desperately. To punish her disobedience, the grandmother had her sent to a mental institution. Chairin found herself in another dark room. Memories of the suffering she endured as a child came flooding back. She made up her mind to get out of that place. She couldn't fall apart here. So Chairin asked a nurse to call for the grandmother. She knelt before her and admitted she was wrong. She said she was willing to marry the chairman's son. And so, the grandmother took Chairin to visit Chairman Moon's home to confirm the marriage alliance. After Chairin and the others returned home, Chairman Moon wired the investment funds to the cosmetics company. The company was saved, but Chairin had to carry an enormous burden of pain. On the eve of the wedding preparations, the playboy Jae-sang sent his driver Eun-hyuk to accompany Chairin to pick out a wedding dress and rings instead of going himself. A store clerk mistook them for a couple and complimented them as the most well-matched newlyweds she had ever seen. Chairin didn't correct her. She went along with it and had Eun-hyuk try on a suit, letting herself pretend to be a happy bride, if only for a brief moment. What Chairin didn't know was that Eun-hyuk was the boyfriend of Yeonju, the missing Sua who had been renamed. They were also planning their own wedding. That night, Chairin took Eun-hyuk out for barbecue and drinks. She poured out her sorrows. Only alcohol could help her briefly forget her pain, forget the future she had no choice but to face. After drinking too much, Chairin climbed over the railing of a wooden bridge when Eun-hyuk wasn't paying attention. She cheerfully waved at him and shouted toward the water, releasing all her pent-up stress. Eun-hyuk didn't know what to do with this unpredictable young lady. Then Chairin half-jokingly told him she would count to 5 and let go. If he couldn't be responsible for her to the end, he shouldn't bother saving her, just let her find peace. Half drunk and half awake, Chairin's heart was filled with confusion. She had no hope for the future. She was ready to leave her life in the hands of this stranger. Eun-hyuk thought this woman must be crazy, but then, when she only counted to 3, she let go without warning and fell backward. At the last possible second, Eun-hyuk grabbed her arm. "Since you saved me, you have to watch how I live well from now on." That night, Eun-hyuk couldn't calm down after getting home. He was intensely curious about Chairin. Just then, Yeonju suddenly came in and startled him. She asked him to try on the new suit she had bought that day. Facing his smiling girlfriend, Eun-hyuk couldn't get Chairin out of his mind. The next day, Chairin's adoptive mother took her to pick out wedding dresses. She instantly fell in love with one and said Sua would look beautiful in it. She was about to go pay when Yeonju was also dragged into the bridal shop by her mother. Yeonju's mother had worked hard her whole life and wanted to buy her daughter a decent wedding dress. By coincidence, Yeonju's mother also had her eye on the same dress Chairin's mother had picked. When Chairin's mother came back from paying and found the dress gone, she panicked and searched everywhere. Meanwhile, Yeonju had put on the dress and looked absolutely stunning. Her mother covered her face, tears in her eyes, telling her daughter how beautiful she was. When Chae-rin's mother saw Yeonju wearing the dress she wanted, she flew into a rage. She grabbed at Yeonju, demanding she take it off. Yeonju's mother pushed her to the ground. The staff rushed over to break up the commotion. What Chae-rin's mother didn't know was that the woman in the wedding dress was her own biological daughter, Sua. Then Chae-rin arrived to try on dresses, but her already angry mother slapped her. To avoid upsetting her mother further, Chae-rin swallowed her hurt and apologized. And so, Chae-rin endured everything and completed the business marriage with Jae-sang. Right after the ceremony, Jae-sang made an excuse about work and had his driver take Chae-rin to the restaurant. On the way, the driver momentarily didn't notice the red light. When he realized, he slammed on the brakes. The sudden stop flung Chae-rin's earring under the driver's seat. She reached down to find it but instead felt a listening device. Chae-rin pretended nothing happened and put her earring back on. While waiting for her husband, she smiled and nodded at a woman in white sitting across from her. Just then, Jae-sang arrived. After dinner, they headed to their hotel room. Chae-rin noticed the woman in white was staying in the room next to theirs. Jae-sang didn't stay long before leaving, claiming he had work to do. But instead of leaving, he went to the room next door. It turned out the woman in white was his mistress. Meanwhile, Eun-hyuk discovered the listening device was missing from the car. He sneaked into Chae-rin's room and started searching through her bag. At that tense moment, Chae-rin emerged from the bathroom holding the device. The two dropped all pretenses. Chae-rin exposed that although Eun-hyuk appeared loyal to the Taesan group, he actually had big ambitions of his own. Eun-hyuk also learned that Chae-rin was only an adopted daughter. Chae-rin picked up the phone to report Eun-hyuk. In a panic, he rushed over to stop her. Her scream drew Jae-sang from the next room. He suspected Chae-rin was cheating on him and pounded on the door. Hotel staff came. Jae-sang grabbed the key card and forced the door open. Looking at the mess in the room, he angrily demanded an explanation from Chae-rin. Suddenly, Chae-rin threw her arms around Jae-sang. Caught off guard by her sudden tenderness, he was momentarily stunned. Eun-hyuk quietly slipped out of the room. What should have been their honeymoon was interrupted when Chairman Moon arranged a year of cooking lessons for Chae-rin. He also ordered his son not to get her pregnant during that year, or their takeover plan would fail. Meanwhile, the grandmother went back to that wicked shaman and asked when Sua would finally return. The shaman told her Sua was nearby and they would meet soon. The grandmother wept with joy. It just so happened that Yeonju, who worked at the cosmetics company, was asked by a colleague to deliver something to the boss's home. She had no idea that the lady of the house was the same woman who had tried to rip the wedding dress off her at the bridal shop. Following the address on the note, she found the villa. A servant let her in. When no one was looking, she stood up and looked around. A strange sense of familiarity drew her to the second floor. Yeonju pulled back a curtain and discovered Sua's room, which had been sealed off for 20 years. Just as she was about to open the door, the lady of the house stopped her. Under the woman's questioning, Yeonju stammered that she hadn't meant to intrude. Suddenly, the lady grabbed Yeonju and started acting erratically. Fortunately, Ms. Kim arrived and stopped it. Terrified, Yeonju ran downstairs, but the lady followed and grabbed her hand, becoming agitated again. Frightened, Yeonju fled the house. Sua's mother couldn't understand how a stranger like Yeonju could find that room when even servants who had worked there for years didn't know it existed. The next day, Sua's mother thought about what had happened and began missing her lost daughter again. She turned to alcohol to drown her sorrows. When the grandmother saw her drinking, she was furious. She told her to go back to her room and stop embarrassing herself. But this only triggered another episode. The grandmother had the housekeeper contact Chae-rin to come home immediately. When Chae-rin got the call, she rushed back to the company to change into Sua's look. After she changed, Eun-hyuk happened to see her. His curiosity about the mysterious Chae-rin grew even stronger. Sua's mother had cut her wrists during her breakdown. By the time Chae-rin arrived in costume, her mother was already being loaded into an ambulance. She tried to get in to accompany her mother but was pulled back by the grandmother, who blamed everything on Chae-rin. If it weren't for her, Sua would never have disappeared. Sua's mother would never have gone crazy. None of this would be happening. All Chae-rin cared about was her mother's condition. She desperately wanted to get in the ambulance, but the grandmother shoved her to the ground. Chae-rin could only sneak in to see her mother that night. She learned from the housekeeper that an employee named Yeonju had visited the house and discovered Sua's long-sealed room. Chae-rin felt there was something more to this. After her mother recovered from her injuries, she became convinced that what happened with Yeonju was no coincidence. She suspected Yeonju was her long-lost daughter. Through the housekeeper, she arranged to meet with Yeonju and kept talking about her daughter's childhood. But Yeonju had lost her memory and couldn't remember anything from before. She was still upset about the wedding dress incident and didn't want anything to do with this unstable woman, so she got up to leave. Learning of this, Chae-rin also arranged to meet Yeonju. To avoid suspicion, she lied and said Sua was her biological sister whom she missed very much. Yeonju looked confused. Chae-rin asked Yeonju to please ignore her mother from now on. It would save a lot of trouble. She also offered to be friends with Yeonju. Flattered, Yeonju agreed. With life back to normal, Yeonju was preparing for her wedding with Eun-hyuk, but on the wedding day, she accidentally saw Eun-hyuk kissing another woman. Heartbroken, she ran out of the venue and nearly got hit by Jae-sang's car. She just wanted to find somewhere to cry her heart out, so she got into Jae-sang's car and begged him to take her away. Seeing how devastated she was, Jae-sang reluctantly drove off with her. Yeonju walked to the edge of a bridge, ready to end it all. She climbed onto the railing. Jae-sang jumped out of the car and ran to grab her, forcibly pulling her away from the railing. Yeonju collapsed on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Worried about her, Jae-sang took her to a hotel to rest for the night. Yeonju's mother stayed up all night in the living room, worried sick about her daughter. When Yeonju finally came home, her anxious mother rushed over, hitting her and scolding her for not coming home all night, a mix of love and anger. To calm her mother down, Eun-hyuk pulled Yeonju into their room. But Yeonju didn't know how to face the boyfriend who had betrayed her. She told him not to ask any questions. Feeling guilty, Eun-hyuk silently agreed. Meanwhile, Sua's mother remained convinced that Yeonju was the missing Sua. She shared her suspicions with her husband, but after all these years, he was mentally and emotionally exhausted. He urged her to let go of Sua and move on with their lives. She stared at him in disbelief, accusing him of cursing their daughter as dead. No matter what, she would never give up searching for her daughter. Sua's mother went to see Yeonju again. This time, she made an unreasonable request. She wanted Yeonju to pretend to be Sua. Just once, Yeonju refused without hesitation. She even called the woman an irresponsible mother for neglecting Chae-rin, who loved her, all because of a daughter she had lost. Then she got up to leave. The mother hurried after her. She had prepared a gift as an apology for her previous behavior. She begged Yeonju to help her and offered to pay. Yeonju felt insulted that this rich woman thought she could buy her. She snapped that whoever became her daughter was truly unfortunate. Then she angrily threw the bag into a trash can and left. The mother watched Yeonju walk away and cried. On another front, it was the anniversary of the deaths of Jae-sang's two ex-wives. Looking at their memorial photos, Chae-rin recalled what she had heard during her cooking lessons. Both of Jae-sang's previous marriages had been business arrangements, and both women came from prominent families. But after marrying Jae-sang, both companies went bankrupt. Would the same thing happen to her cosmetics company? That night, Chae-rin dreamed that her father-in-law chased her to the rooftop. He exposed her as an adopted daughter, saying the real Sua disappeared 20 years ago. Chae-rin was nothing but a substitute. Chae-rin denied it, insisting she was the true owner of the cosmetics company and would never let him take it. Her father-in-law suddenly grabbed her by the throat and tried to throw her off the roof. Chae-rin woke up clutching her neck. The nightmare filled her with dread. After her father-in-law left for work, she sneaked into his study to search for evidence of his schemes. She discovered a hidden room. She quietly approached and saw a safe inside. She was sure it held something important. Just as she was about to enter, Eun-hyuk suddenly appeared and pulled her back. He told her to stay quiet. At that moment, Chairman Moon and his son were watching the security feed. Surprised that Chae-rin hadn't gone into the hidden room, they had begun to suspect her and had deliberately let her find it. The chairman decided Chae-rin was no ordinary woman and that they needed to be more careful around her. Back at the villa, Sua's mother couldn't stop thinking about what Yeonju had said. She refused to eat or drink for days. The worried grandmother had no choice but to summon Chae-rin to dress as Sua and calm her down. Eun-hyuk tried to stop Chae-rin from going. He knew the grandmother's family didn't consider her one of their own, and she would only get hurt. But Chae-rin, who loved her mother, wouldn't listen. She put on the Sua disguise once again to comfort her mother. But this time, her mother looked at her with fury. She couldn't stand seeing Chae-rin dressed as Sua anymore. She said cruel, hurtful things and warned Chae-rin never to dress as Sua again. Her mother's attitude broke Chae-rin's heart. At the same time, Yeonju was at home looking at her wedding photos with Eun-hyuk. Thinking about his betrayal, she angrily threw the photos on the floor. Just then, Chae-rin, who was also feeling down, invited her out for drinks. Yeonju happily agreed. In front of her friend, Yeonju couldn't hold back her tears. She told Chae-rin that her boyfriend had cheated on her. She didn't know whether to forgive him or end the relationship. Chae-rin hugged her sympathetically and advised that if she truly loved him, she should hold on to him and not live with regrets. After saying goodbye to her friend, Chae-rin had just gotten out of her car when Eun-hyuk, who had been waiting, pulled her into a tight embrace. He had heard about everything she went through that day and felt deeply for her. Back home, Yeonju took Chae-rin's advice and decided to give Eun-hyuk another chance. She was about to slip their photo into his wallet when she found a half-burned photograph inside. It was a picture of Chae-rin, smiling brightly. Yeonju understood everything in an instant. The other woman who stole her boyfriend was her so-called friend, Chae-rin. Yeonju sat at her doorstep with the photo, tears streaming silently down her face. When Eun-hyuk came home, the betrayed woman rushed at him, pounding her fists against his chest in a fury. Eun-hyuk silently took her blows without saying a word. Yeonju, clinging to a sliver of hope, asked if he had ever loved her, but Eun-hyuk didn't want to lie and stayed silent. Yeonju's heart shattered completely. This whole relationship had been one-sided. Filled with guilt, Eun-hyuk asked what he could do to make her feel better. Her love had turned to hatred. She told him to stay by her side until death, though punishing him was really just punishing herself. Later, Eun-hyuk handed Chae-rin documents about the companies of Jae-sang's two ex-wives. Chae-rin took a call and stepped aside. At that moment, Eun-hyuk also got a call from Yeonju, who kept demanding to know who he was with. He refused to answer, citing work. Before he could hang up, a runaway bicycle came speeding toward Chae-rin. Eun-hyuk dropped the phone and rushed to save her. Through the phone, Yeonju heard Chirin scream and Eunhyuk's concerned voice. Furious, she hung up. Her hatred for Chirin now burned like wildfire. Yeonju decided to take revenge. She called Chirin's mother and asked to meet. Her attitude had completely changed. She not only offered to try on Sua's clothes but asked the mother to call Chirin so they could all share this happy moment together. Chirin was thrilled when she got the call. Her mother had never voluntarily called her before. Chirin took her mother's hand and apologized for what happened the day before. Then the transformed Yeonju appeared. She looked exactly like a grown-up Sua. Chirin stared in shock. Equally stunned, her mother quickly asked Yeonju to sit down. Yeonju now looked remarkably like the young Sua. Chirin demanded to know why Yeonju was dressed like Sua. Yeonju acted scared and asked the mother if she could change out of the clothes. The mother, completely absorbed in Sua, didn't pay any attention to Chirin. She angrily tried to kick Chirin out. Yeonju looked at Chirin with a smug expression. The more upset Chirin was, the happier Yeonju felt. This was her revenge for Chirin stealing her man. She wanted Chirin to know how it felt to have someone you love taken away. What Chirin didn't know was that Eunhyuk and Yeonju were a couple. Back at the company, Chirin looked at the Sua clothes she had worn for 20 years. Afraid of losing her mother, she called Yeonju, but the call was rejected. Yeonju ignored her texts and turned off her phone. Chirin couldn't understand why Yeonju had changed so much. That night, she waited for Yeonju on her way home. She confronted her. Yeonju had agreed not to see her mother again, so why did she go back on her word? Yeonju looked at her coldly. She realized Chirin seemed afraid of her taking Sua's place. She mocked Chirin for not being a pampered young lady from birth. Infuriated, Chirin raised her hand to slap her. Yeonju caught her wrist. She told Chirin they could never be friends again. War was officially declared between them. Meanwhile, Adu, the man who had kidnapped Sua all those years ago, was released from prison. One day, he happened to spot the woman who had taken Sua away back then. He swaggered into the store to greet her. Yeonju's mother recognized him and became extremely nervous and frightened. She pretended not to know him, but Adu noticed the scar on her face, a mark from when she had tried to save Sua years ago. Just then, Yeonju came home. Adu glanced at the name on her badge. The mother lied and said Adu was a relative from her hometown, then quickly ushered him outside to talk. She told him she had rescued Sua and given her away to someone else, trying to get rid of him, but Adu saw right through her lie. He played along and pretended to believe her, then left for now. After Adu was gone, the mother collapsed to the ground. Memories of 20 years ago came flooding back. Her biological daughter, Jeomju, was on the verge of death because they couldn't afford heart surgery. Desperate, she had made a deal with Adu to do something she would regret for the rest of her life. She allowed Adu to kidnap Sua, the daughter of a wealthy family, planning to use the ransom for her daughter's surgery. In the end, an anonymous benefactor paid for Jeomju's surgery. Seeing her daughter recover made the mother overjoyed. But then she remembered Adu planned to kill Sua by setting her on fire. She rushed to the scene, but flames were already raging. To save Sua, her face was badly burned. The trauma caused Sua to lose her memory. Just as the mother was about to give Sua away, the amnesiac girl threw her arms around her, calling her mom and begging not to be abandoned. The mother, softened by guilt, decided to keep her. From then on, Sua was renamed Yeonju. On another note, after meeting and chatting with Yeonju, Sua's mother had been happy every day. She was dressing up and looking radiant. Today was the first time in years she had gone out looking so put together. She went to the company to see her husband about something. The receptionist said the boss wasn't in, so she decided to wait in his office. That's when she noticed a letter on the desk addressed to Sua. Breathing heavily, she tore it open. It was a blackmail letter. After reading it, she became so agitated that she fainted on the couch. Just then, Chirin walked in. She saw her mother unconscious and tried desperately to wake her. She also noticed the letter in her mother's hand. After reading it, she was horrified. The letter claimed to know where the missing Sua was. Chirin decided to hide the letter. Deep down, she was afraid the true heir would return. Everyone assumed the mother had hallucinated the letter due to grief. Her husband even wanted to send her to a mental hospital for treatment, but the grandmother stopped him, not out of concern for her daughter, but to protect the company's reputation. The daughter's episodes flared up again, and the grandmother couldn't control her, so she called Chirin to stand in for Sua once more. After changing, Chirin looked at herself in the mirror and remembered being viciously scolded by her mother the last time she played Sua. This time, she decided to be brave and be herself. When the grandmother saw that Chirin hadn't changed into the costume, she ordered her to go back to the company and change immediately. Chirin coldly told her she would never dress as Sua again. In the room, seeing her mother in pain, Chirin finally snapped. She grabbed her mother's arms and cried out, asking if she had ever had a place in her heart all these years. But her mother ignored her, so Chirin asked if she wanted Sua back. She could help find her. Her mother immediately calmed down. Chirin walked out of the room. The grandmother had no idea what had happened inside. Chirin looked at her fiercely and said, "What mom needs is me, not some fake Sua in costume." Seeing Chirin's newfound strength, the grandmother was speechless. Walking out of the villa, every step Chirin took was accompanied by memories of being humiliated while dressed as Sua. She didn't want to be Sua's substitute anymore. The next day, Sua's mother, pale as a ghost, suddenly remembered that today was the date mentioned in the blackmail letter. She tried to leave to check it out, but the grandmother thought she was talking nonsense. To prevent more trouble, she had the servants lock her in her room and guard the door. Adu waited for a long time. When Sua's parents didn't show up, he decided to leave. That's when he passed Chirin, who had come to investigate. She recognized him instantly as the man who had been lurking outside the villa. She asked if he knew where Sua was. Adu took off running. Chirin chased after him. She followed him to a deserted area. Adu suddenly appeared and covered her mouth, asking if Sua's father had sent her. Chirin quickly nodded, and he let her go. Then Chirin realized Adu was the man who had kidnapped Sua all those years ago. She was shocked, her body trembling. She demanded proof that Sua was still alive. Otherwise, they wouldn't pay the ransom. Adu arranged to meet her in 3 days, then they would exchange money for information. Chirin and Eunhyuk showed up at the meeting point as scheduled. She told Adu to hand over the evidence first. The crafty Adu snatched the envelope of money from her hands, but refused to give up the evidence. He told Chirin unless she paid 10 times more, he wouldn't hand over Sua's hair. Chirin had no choice but to try to grab it by force. Adu shoved her to the ground and tried to run. Eunhyuk appeared and stopped Chirin from chasing after him. He caught up with Adu, and after a struggle, he got the hair. Just as he was about to punch Adu in the face, he froze as if he'd seen a ghost. Why had this man, who disappeared 20 years ago, suddenly reappeared in his life? After being shaken by Chirin's defiance, the grandmother went back to the shaman. The shaman predicted that Chirin would soon leave Chairman Moon's family and become the true owner of the cosmetics company. The grandmother scoffed, thinking the shaman was joking. But then she had a dream. Chirin had become the owner of the company and had security throw her out. Remembering the shaman's words, the grandmother decided to take action. That same day, Jae-sang had reporters spread rumors online that the cosmetics company's products contained harmful ingredients. It dealt a huge blow to the company's image. Customers demanded refunds. Chirin's father was overwhelmed, fielding one complaint after another. Then Chairman Moon and his son strutted into the cosmetics company. Upon seeing Chirin's father, Chairman Moon demanded repayment of his investment. Her father explained that the company's cash flow had been cut off and asked for more time. But the Moons had come prepared. They accused her father of fraud for using a fake heiress to arrange the marriage. It turned out they had secretly had her father sign a prenuptial agreement. If he deceived them, he would owe massive compensation. Chirin came home and found that the Moons weren't there. She quietly slipped into the hidden room. Inside the safe, she found a plan to take over the cosmetics company. What shocked her even more was a DNA test, showing that she and her father weren't related. They had known all along that she was just an adopted daughter. Everything had been planned from the start. At the cosmetics company, Chairman Moon demanded immediate repayment, but the company had no money, so the chairman proposed converting his investment into company shares. Chirin's father couldn't believe the chairman's true ambition. He refused to let the Moons take control of the company. Chirin came out of the hidden room and bribed a maid with jewelry. She learned the truth behind the deaths of Jae-sang's 2 ex-wives. They had both been driven to suicide by Chairman Moon and his son. After their family companies were taken over, the women, as married-off daughters, had nowhere left to turn and ended their own lives. In the safe, she found memorial photos of the ex-wives. There was also an empty picture frame. Chirin was horrified and immediately dropped it. She ran back to her room in a panic. She was certain that empty frame was meant for her. What was she supposed to do now? To save the company's shares, the hypocritical grandmother humbled herself and begged Chirin to plead with Chairman Moon. That way, the company might still have a chance to survive. For the sake of the company, Chirin agreed to her request. When she met with the chairman, Chirin sincerely apologized. She even told him she had been adopted from an orphanage by the grandmother. But astonishingly, the grandmother shifted all the blame onto Chirin. She painted her as a vain woman who would do anything to become the lady of the Moon household. The grandmother washed her hands of the whole affair. Chirin stood there stone-faced, saying nothing. She had already expected the grandmother would never treat her kindly. The chairman pretended to agree to consider withdrawing his investment. The grandmother was pathetically grateful. After they left, Chirin stopped the grandmother as she was about to get into her car. She demanded to know why the grandmother had pinned everything on her. And do you really believe what Chairman Moon said? The grandmother looked at Chirin with contempt. She mocked her, saying Chirin wasn't sincerely thinking about the company's interests. Chirin told the grandmother to wait and see. One day, she would come back to the company, and the grandmother would welcome her with a smile. At that moment, Eunhyuk told Chirin he had gotten control of Jae-sang's mistress, So-ra. After finding So-ra, Chirin tried to persuade her to return the public funds Jae-sang had embezzled. Otherwise, she'd get dragged down too. But So-ra wasn't about to give up that kind of money so easily. Chirin showed her the memorial photos of Jae-sang's ex-wives. She told So-ra the truth about their deaths. Then she pulled out the empty picture frame to scare her. The owner of that frame would either be So-ra or herself. Either way, once So-ra was mixed up in this mess, there was no getting out, unless she agreed to testify. Chirin had also prepared a plane ticket abroad for So-ra. After thinking it over, So-ra decided to come forward. She handed over a USB drive she had hidden in her pocket. Meanwhile, Chirin's adoptive father told the chairman that his investment had already been converted into shares. The chairman immediately decided to hold a shareholders meeting in 1 hour. Just as the Moons were about to enter the conference room, Chai-rin stopped them. She said she wanted to discuss Jae-sang's crimes. Chai-rin laid out all the details of Jae-sang's embezzlement. If this got out, Jae-sang would be arrested immediately. Not only would he lose any chance of becoming chairman, his reputation would be destroyed. The battle-hardened Chairman Moon wasn't convinced by these documents alone. Without solid evidence, they couldn't threaten Jae-sang. So Chai-rin played So-are's recording. She told them So-are was willing to testify in court about the embezzlement. In the end, Chairman Moon decided to compromise. He asked Chai-rin what she wanted. She said all she needed was for him to return the shares to the cosmetics company, and to agree to her immediate divorce from Jae-sang. The chairman agreed. Thanks to Eun-hyuk's help over the past few days, Chai-rin had finally cut ties with the Moon family. Eun-hyuk took Chai-rin out to clear her head. She stumbled, and Eun-hyuk caught her in his arms. They couldn't help themselves. They kissed. On another front, Ae-do went to see Yeonju's mother again. He asked if Yeonju knew she wasn't her biological daughter. At that moment, Yeonju was coming back from grocery shopping and overheard the conversation inside. Her mother saw the shopping bag dropped at the doorway and realized Yeonju must have heard everything Ae-do said. Frantic, she searched the streets for her daughter. She was terrified Yeonju would leave and never call her mom again. Yeonju couldn't believe what she had heard. By chance, she ended up at the swing outside Chai-rin's house. She sat there singing a childhood song. Chai-rin happened to be leaving the house and saw her. In that moment, Yeonju looked just like Soo-ah, singing on the swing with her mother all those years ago. Before Chai-rin could react, her adoptive mother also stepped outside. Chai-rin looked at her mother in alarm. Luckily, a servant called her mother back inside just in time. Chai-rin walked up to Yeonju and stared at her intently. Yeonju felt uncomfortable under her gaze and snapped at her to stop looking for trouble. Chai-rin kept asking why Yeonju knew that song. Annoyed by her condescending attitude, Yeonju said they weren't friends anymore, so she didn't owe her any explanations about her personal life. Back at her office, Chai-rin pulled out Yeonju's personal file and the DNA report. Her gut told her Yeonju might actually be Soo-ah. So she went to Yeonju's mother's shop and showed her a childhood photo of Soo-ah. The mother asked excitedly where Chai-rin had found the picture. Chai-rin lied and said she had picked it up outside a restaurant. The mother assumed Ae-do was behind it and started mumbling to herself. She was terrified of what Ae-do might have told Yeonju. Watching her strange behavior, Chai-rin suddenly understood everything. Her face went pale. Chai-rin returned to the company and asked about the overseas training program. She wanted to recommend Yeonju for it. She asked a colleague to convince Yeonju's mother. With such a great opportunity, the mother agreed right away. Not only would her daughter get to study abroad for free, but it would also keep Yeonju's true identity from being exposed. The mother happily told her daughter about the program, but Yeonju didn't want to leave the mother who had raised her with so much love. Days of worry and frustration exploded out of her mother all at once. Why couldn't Yeonju understand her good intentions? Seeing her mother so upset, Yeonju tearfully hugged her and agreed to go abroad. At the airport, Chai-rin watched Yeonju's back. She remembered how 20 years ago, after Soo-ah disappeared, she had been kicked out of the villa. She sat alone at a bus station and happened to see Yeonju with her mother. Back then, Soo-ah didn't recognize her at all. Chai-rin immediately called the grandmother to say she had found Soo-ah, but the grandmother didn't believe her. She cursed Chai-rin and told her to die out there and never come back. From that moment on, the game of hide-and-seek between Chai-rin and Soo-ah began. Meanwhile, Ae-do found out Yeonju was leaving and rushed to the airport. Yeonju was about to board when Ae-do stopped her. He told her he was the one who kidnapped her 20 years ago. But there was an accomplice, the woman who had been her mother for the past 20 years. The news hit Yeonju like a bolt from the blue. She felt like a boulder was pressing on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Yeonju didn't know where to go. She wandered the streets aimlessly, desperate to know who her real mother was and whether her mom had really kidnapped her. Helpless tears streamed down her face. Weak and dizzy, she collapsed on the ground. A man passing by happened to see her, Do-hoon, Soo-ah's childhood friend. He rushed over, picked her up, and took her to the hospital. Yeonju asked Do-hoon not to call her family. She just wanted to be alone for a while. In her vulnerability, she broke down sobbing. Kind-hearted Do-hoon pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to her. He didn't notice that a hair clip from Soo-ah's childhood fell out. He told her not to cry, then left. As Yeonju got out of bed, she noticed the hair clip Do-hoon had accidentally dropped. She remembered that the wealthy lady had one just like it. Suddenly, childhood memories came flooding back. She walked to the mirror and pinned the clip in her hair. In the reflection, her face merged with Soo-ah's. She finally remembered. Her real mother was that wealthy lady. The truth left her stunned. Back at the company, a colleague told Chai-rin that Yeonju hadn't gone abroad. She had met a man at the airport and then disappeared. The colleague handed Chai-rin a photo. When she looked at it, the man turned out to be Ae-do. Chai-rin was terrified Ae-do might have revealed Yeonju's true identity. Just then, Do-hoon told Chai-rin that Yeonju was in the hospital. She frantically asked which one. At that moment, Yeonju was running through the streets, crying. Her mind was filled with the voice of her real mother. She decided to find her. She ran to the gates of that familiar villa, tears streaming down her face as she looked at everything before her. This was where she truly belonged. With trembling hands, she pressed the doorbell. Through the video intercom, the lady saw Yeonju crying silently. She rushed to the door. The moment Yeonju saw her, she couldn't hold back her tears. "Mom," she called out. The lady was shocked and confused. Then Yeonju began to sing that nursery rhyme. The lady wept with joy. Her Suwa had finally found her way home. Just then, Chirin and Yeonju's mother arrived at the same time and witnessed the scene. Chirin was heartbroken. The overjoyed birth mother held Yeonju tight. The daughter she had waited 20 years for had finally returned. Overwhelmed with emotion, she collapsed to the ground. Chirin rushed forward to support her mother. She glared at Yeonju and told her to leave. Yeonju looked at Chirin without flinching. She said from now on, she would be the one taking care of mom. Without hesitation, her mother pulled away from Chirin's hands and walked toward the mansion with Suwa. Chirin watched them go, looking like an abandoned puppy. Inside the villa, the grandmother insisted on kicking Yeonju out. The mother angrily demanded to know what the grandmother was trying to do. Years of resentment came pouring out. If the grandmother hadn't sent Suwa to Do-hoon's house, she never would have been kidnapped. 20 years ago, you sent me and my husband away. What did you secretly do to Suwa and Chirin? The grandmother remembered the life-swapping ritual and fell silent. That night, Chirin's father still had doubts about Yeonju being Suwa, but her mother was cold toward Chirin and told her to go to her room. Chirin walked upstairs, helpless and lost. Ms. Kim watched her go and brought her some cold medicine. She reminded Chirin that even if Yeonju was Suwa, no one could easily kick her out of this house. She was now one of the company's 3 major shareholders. Rather than worrying about other things, she should think about how to move forward. Chirin swallowed the medicine with tears in her eyes, but her gaze grew more determined. The next day, as Chirin was leaving, Suwa stopped her. She asked if Chirin ever expected that she would turn out to be Suwa. Chirin said she never imagined Yeonju could so easily abandon the mother who had loved her for 20 years. But Yeonju still held a grudge over Chirin stealing Eunhyuk. Now that she had discovered she was Suwa, she felt even more that Chirin was just an imposter, and that she was the true owner of everything. The dressed-up mother called for Suwa to go out with her. Suwa deliberately asked her mother to invite Chirin along for shopping. She wanted to humiliate her. From start to finish, Chirin felt like an outsider, watching them chat, shop, and get their hair done together. Suwa looked at the dejected Chirin and felt deeply satisfied. Meanwhile, Ms. Kim brought the DNA report to the grandmother. Yeonju was indeed the missing Suwa. The grandmother remembered how she had treated Yeonju before and was filled with guilt. She asked Ms. Kim to bring her granddaughter Suwa to her. Holding Suwa, she cried about how much she had missed her. Then she took Suwa to familiarize her with the company. She told her son-in-law to arrange a good position for Suwa. He thought it was too soon to give Suwa so much responsibility, but the grandmother didn't care. She was determined to have Suwa inherit the company. On the other side, Eunhyuk told Chirin he would support her no matter what. At that moment, Suwa was in an elevator in the distance and saw them. She watched Eunhyuk hug Chirin and gently wipe her tears away. Suwa stared at them, her hatred for Chirin growing even deeper. After rising to power, Suwa promptly abandoned the family who had raised her for 20 years. Her mother cried non-stop. That night, her younger sister ignored the family's warnings and went to the villa. Chirin asked who they were. Confused, the sister called out for Suwa. Chirin noticed Suwa hiding nearby and said she wasn't home. The sister didn't believe her and shouted for Suwa to come back and see their mother, who missed her terribly. Before leaving, the sisters asked Chirin to take good care of Suwa. Chirin then called out to the hiding Suwa. She accused her of being cold and heartless, but Suwa refused to acknowledge them as her family. In her eyes, her mother was just the criminal who had kidnapped her. She had spent 20 years as a foolish hostage. Chirin realized Suwa was an utterly selfish person. The next day, the grandmother planned to hold a shareholders meeting to install Suwa in Chirin's position. Conveniently, Chirin's father had a business trip that day. All they had to do was keep Chirin in the dark. Suwa approached Jae-sang to collaborate on getting Chirin out of the way. So Chirin received a call from Jae-sang asking her to visit a partner factory with him the next day. Suwa told the grandmother she would distract Chirin on the day of the meeting. She also gave the grandmother a newspaper article she had gotten from Jae-sang. This would provide grounds to remove Chirin from her position. The grandmother was shocked by what she read. Suwa smiled smugly. At the shareholders meeting, the grandmother introduced her biological granddaughter Suwa to everyone. The shareholders whispered among themselves. Those who had supported Chirin didn't want her removed from her position. Meanwhile, in the underground parking garage, Eunhyuk was nearly hit by a motorcycle from behind. He chased after it. The rider stopped, threw down a file folder, and left. Inside was a newspaper and several photos of the grandmother. It said a special shareholders meeting would be held that afternoon, and the agenda was to remove Chirin from her position. When Chirin found out, she immediately rushed back to the company. Eunhyuk handed her the documents and told her this was her weapon to turn things around. Just as Suwa was about to announce Chirin's scandal to everyone, Chirin unexpectedly appeared. The grandmother and Suwa were stunned. Chirin told the grandmother to look at her documents first before deciding whether to remove her. After seeing them, the grandmother nervously tucked them away. Chirin realized she had leverage over the grandmother. She took the initiative and explained to everyone why they wanted her removed, simply because she wasn't the grandmother's biological granddaughter but an orphan they had adopted. The shareholders were shocked. The grandmother was so furious she kept pounding the table. Back at the company, Eunhyuk learned that Yeonju was Suwa. His face turned pale. 20 years ago, when Suwa was playing hide-and-seek with Do-hoon, Eunhyuk found her hiding spot. He took Suwa and handed her over to his father, Ae-do. The secret Eunhyuk had kept hidden for years was finally exposed. Suwa looked at Eunhyuk with a cold smile. Chai-rin arrived and heard that they had been a couple, her face filled with despair. Soo-ah found the DNA report of herself and her mother in Chai-rin's office. She confronted Chai-rin. Why did she try to send her abroad when she knew she was Soo-ah? Why didn't she tell the family when she saw her at the bus station 20 years ago? Just then, a voice came from behind. It was her adoptive parents. They had heard everything. Chai-rin was stunned. She stammered, "Dad, Mom." Her mother snatched the documents from Soo-ah's hands. It was the DNA report. She completely broke down. Chai-rin had been deceiving her all along. Her mother nearly fainted from anger. Chai-rin tried to help her, but Soo-ah shoved her away. Soo-ah told the grandmother everything. The grandmother was furious. She cursed Chai-rin as a terrible person for keeping her real granddaughter from coming home sooner. Chai-rin said nothing. Her father asked Chai-rin to come to his room to talk. He said if she had really hidden the truth about Soo-ah, he couldn't forgive her. At that moment, Chai-rin's tears finally spilled over. She cried out about her 20 years of hardship. She had wanted to send Soo-ah abroad because she needed time to accept what was happening. She was afraid that once Soo-ah returned, her parents wouldn't need her anymore. Her father wouldn't listen. He told Chai-rin he needed to think about how to deal with her. Chai-rin fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Now the grandmother hated Chai-rin to the bone. Chai-rin reminded her of how she had excitedly called after seeing Soo-ah at the bus station all those years ago, and how viciously the grandmother had cursed her. Those memories were still vivid. The grandmother was the one who had pushed Soo-ah away in the first place. She had even secretly wanted to abandon Chai-rin. The grandmother was the cause of everything. But the grandmother refused to reflect on herself. Instead, she urged Chai-rin to transfer her shares to Soo-ah as atonement. Chai-rin nodded in agreement. She hoped this would make the grandmother treat her better. The grandmother then took Soo-ah to the company. She was thrilled looking at the share transfer document. Soo-ah was equally smug. When Chai-rin returned to her office, she found Soo-ah sitting in her chair. She sighed and told Soo-ah this seat wasn't so easy to hold. Instead of spending time sucking up to the grandmother, she should learn how to actually do the job. Eun-hyuk came to pick Chai-rin up downstairs. Soo-ah followed her down and demanded to know why Chai-rin acted so arrogant. "You only have all this because of me." As Soo-ah kept pestering her, Eun-hyuk stepped in. Soo-ah looked at him with eyes full of hatred. Later, Soo-ah found Jae-sang. She demanded to know why Eun-hyuk and Chai-rin still hadn't broken up. Jae-sang told her something even more shocking. Eun-hyuk was the one who had kidnapped her all those years ago. After leaving the room, Soo-ah was hit with a splitting headache. Memories of that day came rushing back. Remembering that painful scene, she collapsed to the ground, unable to accept it. Even so, Soo-ah still couldn't let go of Eun-hyuk. She used his guilt to invite him over for dinner. When he arrived, Soo-ah shyly introduced him to the family as her boyfriend. Her father looked at him in disbelief, but Eun-hyuk pushed Soo-ah's hand away and knelt on the ground to apologize. Just then, Chai-rin burst in. She begged Eun-hyuk not to say anything and tried to pull him away. Eun-hyuk broke free from her grip. He confessed that he was the one who had kidnapped Soo-ah all those years ago. Chai-rin pleaded with him to stop talking. Her father stepped forward and slapped Eun-hyuk hard across the face. Chai-rin quickly stood in front of Eun-hyuk. She said he had only been an 11-year-old boy back then. He had no way to defy Adu's orders. Her furious father told Chai-rin and Eun-hyuk to get out. The grandmother demanded to know what was going on. When her father learned that Eun-hyuk and Chai-rin were now a couple, Soo-ah spoke up. Chai-rin was the homewrecker. She and Eun-hyuk had been together first. Soo-ah stood there crying silently. The grandmother told her not to cry over a man anymore. Tomorrow, she would arrange for her to start work. The personnel changes involving Chai-rin and Soo-ah sent shockwaves through the entire company. Soo-ah became the new executive director. Chai-rin was demoted to a sales representative. Soo-ah wanted to grind Chai-rin under her heel. Jae-sang came by to congratulate Soo-ah on her new position. Soo-ah said this had always been her rightful place. It had just been stolen by that woman. Then she casually signed an order form without even reading it. Jae-sang pretended to warn her not to sign things so carelessly. Soo-ah dismissed his concern, boasting that anything Chai-rin could do, she could do too. Meanwhile, Eun-hyuk was taken to a dark room. The grandmother told him if he wanted to atone, he should stay there and reflect. When Chai-rin got home and found Eun-hyuk missing, his phone turned off. She panicked. She guessed the grandmother was behind it. She found Soo-ah and told her Eun-hyuk was missing. Soo-ah claimed it had nothing to do with her. Chai-rin said only Soo-ah could change the grandmother's mind. But Soo-ah impatiently told her to leave. After returning home, Soo-ah asked the grandmother to keep Eun-hyuk locked up. If she couldn't have him, neither could Chai-rin. Just then, Chai-rin barged in. She demanded to know where the grandmother was hiding Eun-hyuk. If this continued, she would call the police. The grandmother told her to go ahead, but before the police arrived, Eun-hyuk would be buried. Chai-rin backed down. She knelt and tearfully begged the grandmother not to hurt Eun-hyuk. The grandmother was unmoved. Desperate, Chai-rin offered to be disowned. The grandmother immediately agreed and told her where Eun-hyuk was being held. Chai-rin took Eun-hyuk away. Then the grandmother announced to everyone that Chai-rin had voluntarily agreed to be disowned. The family could finally live in harmony. But Ms. Kim's face was filled with rage. She went to see the shaman and asked her to tell the grandmother that only if Chai-rin returned could the company be saved. The shaman asked if she should use money to buy off Adu, who had been coming around frequently. She also asked when Ms. Kim would tell Chai-rin that she was her biological mother. Ms. Kim said she would never reveal that secret. It turned out Ms. Kim was the mastermind behind the kidnapping. Eun Hyuk, hiding behind them, overheard everything. He confronted Ms. Kim. He didn't understand why she had been so cruel to her own daughter. Ms. Kim believed everything she had done was for Chae-rin's own good. Later, Ms. Kim went to see Jae-sang. She asked him to help make Chae-rin the owner of the cosmetics company. In exchange, she would get rid of Eun Hyuk so Chae-rin could return to Jae-sang's side. After Ms. Kim left, Jae-sang happily looked at a shipping manifest. He had noticed Sua's habit of signing things without reading them, so he had tricked her into signing this document. Back home, Jae-sang drank alone. His father asked what was wrong. Jae-sang said someone had offered to get rid of Eun Hyuk for him, but he was afraid that if he did, Chae-rin would never speak to him again. The chairman encouraged his son to do whatever it took to win Chae-rin. Jae-sang seemed tempted. At the company, Chae-rin's father confronted Sua. Had she even read the contract before signing it? Sua defensively said she had. That made him even angrier. Do-hoon explained to Sua that she had signed away the company's management rights and voting rights to Jae-sang. The company could be taken over. Sua was speechless with fear. Meanwhile, Eun Hyuk found the shaman. He learned that Ms. Kim had once been used as a life substitute by the grandmother, just like Chae-rin. Eun Hyuk was shocked by the grandmother's inhumanity. He immediately told Chae-rin the truth. Her biological mother, whom she hadn't seen in 20 years, had been the housekeeper by her side all along. Chae-rin went straight to Ms. Kim. She asked if she was really her mother. Ms. Kim's expression changed as she turned to face Chae-rin. Eun Hyuk was hiding behind a pillar, watching them. Suddenly, someone hit him from behind with a bat. He collapsed to the ground. Chae-rin angrily told Ms. Kim she would never acknowledge her as her mother. She thought Ms. Kim was terrifying. Heartbroken, Ms. Kim left, thinking about what Chae-rin had said. Her face was full of pain. Ms. Kim went to see Eun Hyuk. She blamed him for telling Chae-rin everything. Eun Hyuk said she had given up the chance to earn her daughter's forgiveness. Agitated, Ms. Kim told him to stop talking nonsense. As long as Chae-rin could succeed, nothing else mattered. She ordered the men in black to watch Eun Hyuk. When the time came, they would take care of him. After leaving, Ms. Kim arranged to meet Chae-rin. She urged Chae-rin to use Jae-sang to get what she wanted. Chae-rin refused to listen to her or follow her plans. Ms. Kim pulled out a photo showing Eun Hyuk in her custody. She demanded Chae-rin obey her arrangements, become Jae-sang's woman again and crush the grandmother completely. But this time, Chae-rin wasn't afraid. Eun Hyuk had anticipated something might happen to him, so he had installed a tracking device in advance. He had told Chae-rin to call his friend Kyung-shik if anything went wrong. Ms. Kim clearly didn't know about this. She told Chae-rin defiantly, "Let's see how long you can hold out." Just as the men in black were about to deal with Eun Hyuk, Kyung-shik arrived with a gun, along with Chae-rin. After a fierce fight, the men heard police sirens and fled in panic. Eun Hyuk was rescued. When Ms. Kim found out, she was furious. That night, Adu showed up at the grandmother's house. He ran into Chae-rin's father, who angrily told his driver to get rid of him. Adu quickly said he was there to expose Ms. Kim's true face. Once inside, Adu pointed at Ms. Kim and made his accusations. The grandmother heard the commotion and came out. She told Ms. Kim to throw this stranger out. Adu immediately knelt and begged the grandmother to hear him out. He pointed at Ms. Kim and said she was the one who ordered him to kidnap Sua. The grandmother couldn't believe it. She asked Ms. Kim if it was true. Ms. Kim was about to deny it when the lady of the house came downstairs. She confirmed that Ms. Kim had orchestrated Sua's kidnapping. Ms. Kim had also been drugging her with hallucinogens for 20 years. Just that afternoon, she had tried to force her to take more pills. Fortunately, she hadn't taken all of them. The grandmother repeatedly asked Ms. Kim if this was true. Adu grabbed Ms. Kim and told her to stop pretending. She shook off his hand, still denying everything. Then the lady suggested calling Chae-rin, Ms. Kim's daughter, to confront her. Seeing that her secret was out, Ms. Kim bolted from the room. Chae-rin had just gotten out of her car when she ran into the fleeing Ms. Kim. She grabbed her and told her to stop, to not become someone like the grandmother. Ms. Kim said, "This is who I am. Don't try to understand me. Don't look for me anymore. Let this be the last time we see each other." Then she shook off Chae-rin and ran. The next day, the grandmother saw the contract Sua had signed. She was livid. She scolded Sua, asking what was wrong with her brain. How could she have signed such a thing? Outside the door, Sua overheard the grandmother complaining that she never should have brought her back. Hearing this was devastating. Sua decided to get revenge on the grandmother. She found Jae-sang and said she wanted to transfer her shares to him. Jae-sang was stunned. When the grandmother saw the share transfer agreement, she berated Sua. Was she trying to destroy this family? To bankrupt the company? Sua shot back that yes, she was stupid and foolish. She had spent 20 years in poverty. She couldn't wash away the lowliness and cheapness inside her. Her mother scolded Sua for being so inconsiderate, staying out all night without a word. Sua snapped back that the grandmother had given up on finding her anyway. Her mother angrily demanded to know if that was true. The grandmother had no answer. Left with no choice, the grandmother swallowed her pride and went to see Chae-rin. With a stiff expression, she told Chae-rin to make up for Ms. Kim's sins by saving the company. Chae-rin laughed bitterly. She said the grandmother should apologize and ask for forgiveness first. How could she care only about her own family's lives while making others serve as life substitutes? Insulted, the grandmother raised her hand to slap Chae-rin. Eun Hyuk blocked her. He warned her not to touch Chae-rin. Chai-rin told the grandmother never to come again. I've already cut ties with your family. As the grandmother was about to leave, she remembered what Chairman Moon had said. If she knelt before Chai-rin and got her to return to Jae-sang as his wife, he would spare the cosmetics company. With no other option, the grandmother knelt and begged for forgiveness. Chai-rin remembered all the terrible things the grandmother had done to her. She firmly refused. Out of options, the grandmother left. On the way, she made the driver get out so she could cry alone. The proud woman had actually knelt before Chai-rin. Feeling humiliated, she muttered that one day she would make Chai-rin pay double for this. After returning home, she dreamed that Ms. Kim forced her to drink poison, trying to take them both down together. Startled awake, she immediately set up a one-touch emergency call function on her phone. Sure enough, the next day, Ms. Kim saw Chai-rin and the servants leave. She slipped into the villa and quietly began massaging the grandmother's shoulders. Terrified, the grandmother ran to her room and locked the door. Ms. Kim used a spare key to open it. The grandmother quickly hit the emergency button. Ms. Kim grabbed her phone and accused her of all the evil she had done, which had forced her to treat Chai-rin the way she did. The grandmother said as long as she was alive, Chai-rin would never set foot in this house. Ms. Kim grabbed the grandmother by the throat, ready to kill her. Just then, police sirens sounded outside. Ms. Kim fled. At home, Chai-rin was torn. Eun-hyuk asked if she could really stand by while the company she had protected for years was taken over. He took Chai-rin to find the sister of Jae-sang's ex-wife. She had kept evidence of the crimes committed by Chairman Moon and his son. Just then, Soo-ah, upset over the company situation, came alone to the bridge where she had once tried to jump. Ms. Kim, driving by, happened to see her. She asked Soo-ah why she was there. Not knowing who Ms. Kim really was, Soo-ah said she was just in a bad mood. Looking at Soo-ah, Ms. Kim felt this was heaven's final gift to her. She offered to drive Soo-ah home. Once in the car, Soo-ah asked why Ms. Kim had been ignoring her. Ms. Kim coldly asked, "Do you want to die with me?" Then she floored the gas pedal. Terrified, Soo-ah struggled for the steering wheel. Ms. Kim had no choice but to stop. Soo-ah jumped out and tried to run. Ms. Kim caught her and gripped her tightly. She told her that both she and Chai-rin had been adopted by the grandmother to serve as life substitutes. She revealed all of the grandmother's crimes. She showed Soo-ah the scars from being tortured by the grandmother years ago. The grandmother had left her to die. She had sold her daughter Chai-rin to the Moon family. She had even forced Chai-rin into a mental institution. Ashamed, Soo-ah apologized to Ms. Kim. Ms. Kim said harshly, "Don't apologize. I was the one who kidnapped you." Then she let Soo-ah go. Sensing something was wrong, Soo-ah asked where she was going. Ms. Kim said it was none of her business. After she left, Soo-ah contacted Chai-rin. She said Ms. Kim was acting strangely. It seemed like she wanted to kill herself. She gave Chai-rin the license plate number. Eun-hyuk and Chai-rin split up to search. Chai-rin suddenly spotted Ms. Kim wading into a river, heading toward deeper water. Without thinking, Chai-rin plunged in and dragged her back to shore. She screamed, "Why are you doing this? No matter what the grandmother did to you, it's no excuse to abandon your children. What right do you have to die? Didn't you want revenge? Then stay alive." She shoved Ms. Kim away and left. She was just as heartbroken. Back home, Eun-hyuk comforted the wounded Chai-rin. The next day, at Chairman Moon's house, she asked a maid if Jae-sang's ex-wife had acted differently before she died. The maid said she only heard shouting between the ex-wife and the chairman that day, nothing else unusual. Suddenly, Chai-rin noticed the pen the maid used to keep records. It matched the description given by the ex-wife's sister. She asked to borrow it. At home, Eun-hyuk plugged the recording pen into a computer, but found no audio files. Chai-rin was puzzled. Then she remembered the chairman's tape recorder. The evidence had to be on those tapes. Just then, Jae-sang invited Chai-rin to his house. Eun-hyuk dropped her off. He had a bad feeling. Chai-rin reassured him she would leave as soon as she found the recordings. She asked him not to worry. Once inside, Jae-sang claimed he had to meet with some executives upstairs and deliberately left Chai-rin alone. She quietly slipped into the hidden room and searched for the tapes. The iron door clicked shut behind her. She turned to see Jae-sang standing at the entrance, watching her. Chai-rin asked him to let her out. Jae-sang asked what she was looking for. She kept trying to convince him to open the door. Suddenly, he asked if she had ever loved him. Chai-rin calmly said she had only ever loved Eun-hyuk. Hurt, Jae-sang said, "If I can't have you, no one will." Then he left her there. Eun-hyuk was waiting anxiously outside. He called Chai-rin, but Jae-sang answered. He told Eun-hyuk that Chai-rin might never be able to take his calls again. Eun-hyuk warned him, if he touched a hair on her head, he would never forgive him. Jae-sang mocked him for overestimating himself and hung up. Eun-hyuk contacted Kyung-sik. They planned a rescue. He and Kyung-sik brought a group of men disguised as security personnel. They claimed there was an anomaly in the house that needed inspection. Jae-sang impatiently told them to hurry up. He didn't notice Eun-hyuk among them. Eun-hyuk found Chai-rin in the hidden room. He told her to change into a security uniform and follow the others out. Jae-sang sensed something was off and went to check. The group blocked him. In desperation, Eun-hyuk threw a smoke bomb. In the chaos, Chai-rin escaped. Jae-sang spotted a dropped hat. He rushed to the hidden room, only to find it empty. Back home, Chai-rin and Eun-hyuk played the recording. They heard a conversation between Chairman Moon and Jae-sang's ex-wife. At the same time, the Moons discovered through surveillance that Chai-rin had taken the tape. Chairman Moon got a headache. He told Jae-sang to get Chai-rin back immediately. When Chai-rin arrived at Taesan Group, Chairman Moon silently handed her the share transfer agreement Suah had signed. Chai-rin returned the recording. Jae-sang, furious, found Eun-hyuk waiting outside. He said this wasn't over yet. Eun-hyuk told him to get it straight. They were talking about premeditated murder. Jae-sang said defiantly, "You think you can get me investigated? Do you know my connections in politics?" Eun-hyuk believed justice would prevail. Jae-sang mocked his naivety and warned him, "Soon you'll be on your knees, begging me." Just then, Chai-rin came out of the office. She told Jae-sang to stop with the childish threats. Then she took Eun-hyuk's hand and left. Watching them walk away together, Jae-sang felt the urge to kill. At that moment, Chai-rin's father decided to hold a shareholders meeting. He planned to nominate Chai-rin as the company's next president. He understood she was the most qualified for the position. He didn't want to be the grandmother's puppet anymore. Only by letting go could the company grow stronger. Chai-rin and Eun-hyuk were discussing living as ordinary people, tired of all the backstabbing and fighting. But then she got a call asking her to attend the shareholders meeting. When her father announced that Chai-rin would be the next president, the shareholders murmured among themselves. Chai-rin arrived at the conference hall. Her father quickly explained to everyone. He and his daughter Suah had repeatedly put the company in crisis. It was always Chai-rin who stepped up to save it. She deserved to be the next president. Meanwhile, at home, Chai-rin's mother told the grandmother that her husband was going to make Chai-rin the next president that day. When the grandmother heard this, she was so angry she stormed into the company and burst through the doors. She shouted, "Who gave this outsider permission to be president?" She rudely asked Chai-rin what spell she had cast on everyone. What trick was she using to become president? The grandmother grabbed Chai-rin, about to hit her, but was stopped. Just then, Suah walked into the conference hall. Do-hoon presented a petition signed by all employees supporting Chai-rin as president. Suah then announced she was transferring her shares to Chai-rin, and that she supported her as the next president. The grandmother nearly passed out from rage. Suah and Chai-rin walked out of the company together. Suah said she had finally handed off her headache of an assignment. Now she wanted to think about what she truly wanted. Looking at Eun-hyuk in the distance, Suah said calmly, "Go on. Your man is waiting for you." Chai-rin and the others left happily. Do-hoon came to Suah's side. He said this was the Suah he had known before. Suah smiled genuinely. When the Moons heard the news, Jae-sang sighed deeply. Now he really wanted to kill Eun-hyuk. Sure enough, the next morning, Chai-rin left early for her inauguration ceremony. Eun-hyuk bought flowers and a ring, planning to propose. Just then, a large truck deliberately drove the wrong way and crashed into him head-on. After the ceremony, Chai-rin couldn't reach Eun-hyuk by phone. The unconscious, injured Eun-hyuk was dumped by the riverside by a group of men. From that day on, Chai-rin lost all contact with him. A year passed since Eun-hyuk's disappearance. Chai-rin still hadn't given up searching for him. She spoke to the TV screen, expressing how much she missed him. She begged him to come back. At that moment, a man with a silhouette like Eun-hyuk stood watching her broadcast. Suah had reconciled with the mother who raised her for 20 years. The four of them, mother and daughters, were living happily together. Suah was preparing to go abroad to study makeup. Today she came to say goodbye to her family. She also visited Chai-rin's office to bid her farewell. She comforted Chai-rin. Eun-hyuk had been missing for a year, and everyone assumed he was dead. But as long as she believed he was alive, he would come back one day. "I'm living proof, aren't I?" Touched, Chai-rin thanked her. They held hands and wished each other well. When Suah arrived at the airport, Do-hoon suddenly appeared. Suah was surprised. He said, "How could I let you leave alone? This time, I'm never letting you go." Suah's heart was filled with warmth and emotion. Meanwhile, Chai-rin's adoptive parents settled into a peaceful life. At Taesan Group, Jae-sang learned their stock price had plummeted. An article online was calling Taesan Group a murder corporation. Jae-sang immediately suspected Chai-rin was behind it. He rushed to confront her, throwing the newspaper on her desk. He accused her of stabbing him in the back. Chai-rin looked confused and said it had nothing to do with her. In his anger, Jae-sang blurted out, "Don't tell me it was the dead Eun-hyuk who reported us?" Chai-rin demanded to know how he could be so sure Eun-hyuk was dead. Jae-sang's guilty expression gave him away. Suddenly, he got a call from a prosecutor. His face went pale. Prosecutors had already arrived at Chairman Moon's office. They arrested him on charges of murder for hire. Panicked, Jae-sang went to Director Ko for help. He insisted his father was innocent. Director Ko said Jae-sang's story didn't match what his secretary had reported. He called in his secretary to confront Jae-sang. The moment Jae-sang saw the secretary, his face turned ashen. The secretary was Eun-hyuk, alive. Director Ko said coldly, "Whether you committed murder or not, the court will decide." Jae-sang stormed out. Eun-hyuk looked healthier than ever. It turned out Ms. Kim had saved him. When he woke up, he asked why she had rescued him. She said she couldn't become someone like the grandmother. She couldn't ignore a life, so she saved him. Afterward, Ms. Kim turned herself in to pay for her crimes. When Chai-rin visited her, she asked why Ms. Kim had sent her to the grandmother's house all those years ago. Ms. Kim didn't explain. She only said she wasn't a good mother. She told Chai-rin not to visit her anymore. Then she turned and left. Holding back tears, Chai-rin asked if she had ever felt sorry for her as a child. Ms. Kim forced back her own tears and said no. But the truth was, Ms. Kim had witnessed all of Chai-rin's suffering and felt every bit of her pain. 20 years ago? Everyone believed the century-old ginseng had saved Chai-rin. In reality, it was Ms. Kim who had secretly given her medicine to cure the rashes. At the villa, only the grandmother remained. Chai-rin came to visit. She told her the company had expanded to Shanghai. She wouldn't be coming back anymore. She asked the grandmother to take care of herself. The grandmother had finally come to respect Chai-rin. She called her president. She even asked Chai-rin to take her to live with Chai-rin's mother. Seeing the proud old woman finally humble herself, Chai-rin felt a pang of emotion. Back at the company, Chai-rin was overcome with sadness. She wished Eun-hyuk would come back to her soon. Just then, she received a text from Eun-hyuk, asking her to meet at their old spot. Desperate to see him, she rushed over. When Eun-hyuk appeared, Chai-rin said, "You promised, if you couldn't be responsible for me to the end, you wouldn't save me." The two gazed at each other, memories of everything they'd been through flooding back, the joy, the pain, the bittersweet moments. In that romantic moment, they kissed, together forever, never to be apart. And so concludes the recap of the Korean drama Hide and Seek. Thank you for watching. I'm Dino K Drama. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and TikTok channel. See you next time for another Korean drama.